So my next guest on the show is Nikki Emerton, and Nikki is a master NLP practitioner and mum of four, very busy lady. She has two businesses, doing stuff for children with anxiety, and also her NLP business. So welcome to the show, Nikki. Lovely to have you with us this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Elaine. Thank you for having me on the show.
So kind of working backwards, to start with today and how you got here. You're an NLP practitioner. So for the listeners' benefit, what is NLP?
So NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. It literally means neuro means mind, linguistics means language, and programming. So essentially I work out what people's thoughts and how they are affecting their behaviours. So that's it in simple language.
Okay. So that's NLP in a nutshell.
Yeah,
okay,
in a very small nutshell.
Right. How did you discover NLP and its benefits for you personally?
So back in 2009, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, anxiety and depression. And I was so ill that I lost my job and I couldn't care for my children. And my eldest one was beginning to care for me. And I found something on Google, and I don't recommend it for most people that have symptoms, but for me, Google worked out really well. And I found something called the lightning process. And I'm also a practitioner of the lightning process. And that's a 3-day course which stems from NLP, and it's designed to reset your body's own natural healing system. So that's how I became really interested in NLP, because that course turned my life around, literally. And I made a promise to myself that I would become a practitioner way back in 2009, but waited till my two youngest children were a lot older before I started training.
So the lightning process, that is presumably a tried and tested, proven methodology that uses NLP, does it?
It does use NLP, and there's various research papers out on it, and it's been found incredibly useful and beneficial for people with chronic fatigue. But we have around 200 conditions on our database where our clients have seen an improvement in their symptoms. For me, I completely recovered from fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, anxiety and depression using the lightning process. So I'm a little bit biased.
Well, why not, indeed? It's brilliant. It's amazing the number of people that I interview for my show, which and they've had similar kind of situation, similar story. They've had ill health, they've recovered by whatever means, and then they've trained as practitioners. It's quite a common theme. And a lot of therapists I talk to, the same thing. They've come to their therapy through their story, which is great because you can then identify with your client base, can't you?
Yes, you can. Yeah, you come from a place of experience rather than academia, and it makes such a difference.
So people who have got these conditions, I mean, you've mentioned about 4 different conditions there. It's not just one or another, but typically, in my experience, I find that if somebody has one condition, very often they'll have a whole string of conditions.
Yes.
And, it's almost impossible to separate them because one leads to another or causes another or whatever. So what would be your guidance? What would be your advice to people who find themselves with a diagnosis and kind of on this treadmill that, they're continually in pain, they're feeling unwell, they're depressed, they're anxious? How can they get out of that?
I think first by acknowledging that you are individual and unique, which is why there are so many holistic and complementary therapies that have turned other people's lives around. Doing what's right for you, because we seem to have fallen into a bit of a trap where we go to the doctors and we expect the doctor to fix us. So I think part of my journey was, and I accepted really quickly responsibility for my own well-being. That I'd been down a whole host of NHS treatments and therapies, medication. I was on 21 pills at one point a day, and none of it was working. So I think if you find that medical or pharmaceutical methods are not working for you, then I think broaden your horizon and start looking into what has worked for other people who are in a similar situation for you. Then ask yourself, do you think it would work for you? So it's very much trusting your instincts about what is right for you rather than taking a one-size-fits-all approach.
You made several good points there, Nikki. So taking responsibility is number one, isn't it? I mean, it's so important. And then when you decide that, okay, I need to sort something out for myself, acknowledging where you're at. And so many people are in denial, and they keep on putting their head in the sand. Men in particular, I find, are particularly bad at this. Their head is in the sand, and they can't accept. They're not brought up. British people, we're brought up to be sort of stiff upper lip, mind your P's and Q's, don't speak until you're spoken to. That's certainly how I was brought up. And so asking for help is quite a challenge. But you mentioned Dr. Google, and whilst Dr. Google can be very helpful, it can also be scary as well. So if you have anxiety and you're Googling symptoms, you can actually scare yourself. But I think the important thing is, as you say, research what other people have done, other people with similar symptoms to yours. So first of all, take responsibility, acknowledge where you're at, do your research, and then follow whichever path seems to be speaking to you. Following your intuition is really important.
Yeah, because belief plays a huge part in our recovery. What we believe will work for us. The placebo effect shows that what we believe will work for us massively increases our chances of recovery and well-being.
Yeah, another important point. And there's so many studies now for all kinds of conditions, and using the placebo effect, and a lot of people have recovered and they've not actually taken anything. It's their belief. Their mind is such a powerful tool, isn't it?
It is, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So how long did it take you then, once you acknowledged where you're at, took responsibility, did your research and everything, you started looking at NLP as a possible way to get out of your situation? How long did it take you to fully recover?
I recovered on day one of the course from fibromyalgia. So I walked out of there after 3 to 4 hours training with no pain at all.
Good grief.
I was one of, it doesn't happen for everyone. It does happen for a lot of people. It's not a race, it's a journey. But for me, the penny dropped. I completely understood how powerful my mind was and how I'd managed to get myself stuck, but not intentionally. So it's very much a case of what's happened has been unintentional. It's been unconscious. Our unconscious mind is responsible for 80% of what goes on in our bodies and our minds. And so the penny dropped for me, that I understood that the pain that I was feeling was kind of like mixed messages. The message had gone wrong somewhere. And once I knew that calmed everything down. It calmed my neurology down, which meant that I very rarely experienced pain in the few months after that. Occasionally, if I tripped up, I knew that it was just a message from the brain processing center, which is in your brain, to my muscles, and it wasn't quite true. It wasn't an accurate representation. The chronic fatigue, I went straight back to work, so that was relieved very, very quickly. The depression lifted very quickly. I'd say the social anxiety took a few years because I didn't actually realise that that's what I had. I didn't understand that not everybody sat in their bedrooms throwing loads and loads of clothes to one side because it wasn't the right thing, and somebody else might be wearing it. All of those conversations that were going in my head, I didn't realise that wasn't normal. And it's only when I started talking to other people and they go, no, I just pull out the first item, put it on and off I go, that I began to think, oh, if they're doing that and I'm doing this, and there's something, do I want to keep doing what I'm doing? No, I don't. I'd rather be like them. So I used the Lightning process to then change that. But that probably took about 4 or 5 years, mainly because I hadn't acknowledged, which brings us right back to responsibility and acknowledgement that actually that's what's going on for you. So over the period of time, I think I couldn't work in 2009. 6 months later, I started running. I had to give myself time to come off all the medication that I was on. So that was 2010 in May. In 2013, I ran my first half marathon. And in 2016, I think I ran a marathon.
Wow, good for you. That's amazing. And we know the effects of oxygen to our brain and our whole bodies is very healing, isn't it? And the more oxygen we can have, which is why exercise is good. But running marathons isn't for everybody, but even a bit of exercise helps, doesn't it?
It's doing, so there's a really good video I watched recently. It's exercise that is achievable and pleasure and gives you a sense of achievement. So whatever that is for you, so even if it is just taking 5 or 6 steps, because I do work with people who are so affected by their conditions that they're relatively immobile. So even if it's standing up feeling comfortable, if that is your version of exercise that you have achieved yourself, that you've not been able to do, that's enough. If going out walking in the fresh air once a day for 5 minutes, if that's what is achievable and a sense of fulfillment for you, then that's enough. It's, as you're saying, running isn't for everyone. It's whatever brings you joy.
I think that's really important, to be happy and to laugh, and as best you can, even seeing the black humour sides of things. I mentor people through cancer, and the number of times that I see a complete transformation with people who accept responsibility, take some action, but are also realistic, and they pace themselves, but they also don't take themselves too seriously, and they can see the funny side of what's happening to them, and know it's going to pass. It's not forever. It's just a chapter in the book of life for them.
It is.
And that's why my brand Perfect Health is, what is perfect health for you is not the same as somebody else. So we tend to go through life comparing ourselves, don't we? The grass is always greener and all that sort of thing, but it's not always. So you also do things with children. So how did you get involved with anxiety in children?
So I noticed that more and more I was getting younger and younger clients who were struggling with anxiety, and it was affecting their ability to attend school. So the work that I was doing with a colleague of mine, Laura Dumbleton-Jones, we found that there were certain things that we were doing that were neuro-linguistic processes that were working really well with children who had anxiety, and we were seeing great results. So we put them together over 3 one-hour courses. So it's 3 weeks long, 1 hour each week. And on week 1, we teach them confidence. So confidence when you don't have confidence. So us as adults, we can draw on a huge wealth of experiences where we felt confident, and we can kind of self-talk us into being able to do things. If you don't have that as a child, that's really tough. So week 1, we teach them confidence. Week 2, we resolve their anxiety. So that's that internal conflict that is creating that fight, flight, freeze response that is kind of feels all consuming. It feels like you're not in control of it. And then on week 3, we teach them how to be calm, because these are all states, these are all skills that not everybody learns. So we started that in September, and we're developing that, and we're hoping to send that nationwide very, very soon.
Brilliant. And is that in person or online?
It's in person. So it's primary school age children. It's called Happy Confident Kids. And it's in person with a learning support assistant or teaching assistant, or what's called an ELSA, an emotional learning support assistant, in the room, so that they learn the skills as well, so they can then support the children in school if they're having a bit of a moment.
Oh, that's a great idea. And how do you plan sending that nationwide?
Through NLP practitioners that we already know. So in January, I'll be training people in Bath, in Dorset, in Warwickshire, and in Switzerland.
Wow.
So yeah.
Fantastic. Global before very long. How do people get hold of you then, Nikki?
So you can get hold of me on my website, which is www.bu.org.uk, or Happy Confident Kids is happyconfidentkids.org.uk. I'm easily findable by just my name, so Nikki Emerton. So you can give me a call, you can book me online. I'm quite easily findable through all of those means, and on Facebook as well by both of those company names.
Okay, and how are you spelling Emerton, your surname, for the benefit of the listeners?
Emerton, and my name is Nikki, Nikki. So I'm on all of the social media platforms: Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. So yeah, I'm quite easily findable.
Marvellous. Okay, that's Nikki Emerton. And BU, that's not the word U, it's the letter U, isn't it?
It is, yes. So the letters beu.org.uk.
Fabulous. Okay, thank you. That's really, really heartwarming to hear your story, Nikki. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you.
So, two songs. This Is Me from The Greatest Showman and Lifted by the Lighthouse Family. Why have you chosen these two songs?
So the Lighthouse Family takes me right back to when I suffered many bouts of depression, both generalized depression and postnatal depression 4 times and prenatal depression once. So depression and I were very good friends, and the Lighthouse Family is very much about this time will pass and you can be lifted. So I listened to that a lot when I felt that there was no light at the end of the tunnel. And it gave me a sense of this moment will pass, it's temporary. And I really valued that. And This Is Me from The Greatest Showman. The words that you hear on there is that round of bullets that hits your skin and the unpleasant things that are being said. That was my own voice to myself. I didn't need any enemies. I was my own worst enemy with my own thoughts. So that was very much about accepting me for who I am and the strengths that I have. And now the journey that I've been on to be able to help other people has been really, really valuable. And I couldn't have done that without having experienced what I'd experienced.
Marvellous. Well, thank you very much for sharing that with us this afternoon, Nikki. And here are your two song choices.
Thank you, Elaine.